And the question is about when a wife has some sexual trauma that's a part of her story, right?
Mm.
That she's had some experiences at one point in her life, maybe even that predated the spouse, that has impacted her experience of sexuality and maybe made it not a good thing, and it made it a painful thing, a scary thing, a violating kind of feeling thing. And you know, if a husband is going, maybe confused in some ways or trying to make sense of a wife's lack of interest in connecting sexually, maybe even avoidance of conversation and having that first step, right? Maybe husband's trying to, he's taking his notes and he's going to try to have that conversation and make it a safe space, and it just doesn't seem, she didn't seem open to it and doesn't seem to want to have that dialogue. Can you maybe have a little conversation with both the husband kind of in that scenario and helping him have some understanding about maybe what's going on with her and what she's experiencing, and helping make sense of what it is that he's seeing there? Then maybe have a conversation with the woman that's in that space of how do I navigate this in my relationship? How do I kind of, if I'm in that place of I've been avoiding the conversation altogether and not engaging, don't know what to do with that, kind of wish it would just go away. And if my husband would just be asexual and stop being a sexual creature, then that would be great for us, and everything would be fine. Maybe have a conversation with her as well about how to approach or navigate that. So, first for the husbands, that are trying to do step one, what do you have to say to them?
Oh man, my heart's so tender for these couples. I think that I would want first husband to have an idea of some of the things he might encounter that are going to be just crazy. They're going to feel insane to him, right? Things like, I just don't think I am sexual. I don't think my body can. There's just something wrong with my body. I just think that isn't what my body can do. There's a feeling you might be hearing messages of like feeling despair, right? Because the wife is in this place of not understanding why her body is not having the response that it's supposed to have. And she's come to all kinds of conclusions about what that must mean. And so you might hear things like, I think that my body just doesn't work that way, right? And that to a husband who doesn't understand the
Like,
effects trauma can have.
like what do you mean? Especially if early in our relationship, right? It seemed, like a kerosene soaked log. I light the match, I throw it, and we burst into flames. Like how can that be? That you're telling me this when we've had these other experiences together.
Right. And that is a very confusing thing, that the dopamine and adrenaline at the beginning of the relationship a lot of times is it's an accelerator that allows the trauma to kind of be in the background in the body. But once that is out of the system, then that trauma is coming forward in the body, and the person is experiencing the effects when they weren't as much before. There can also be a lot of triggering things about now being in a marriage. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to, I think it's so important what it is that you're saying here, and important to slow down because, a lot of guys that I have worked with in the situation, there's this sense of like, trying to make sense of what's going on.
Right.
And there's this sort of, well, is it kind of like a bait and switch thing? Was she like pretending to be into me and into kind of sexually, and that wasn't really where she was at and what she was feeling. And so, that was just kind of like a kind of false pretense. And now we're married and she's really not interested in sex at all and doesn't care to be close to me and share that with me for the next 50 years that we're kind of married together? Or there's so confusing, right? And trying to sense. But what I hear you saying is that adrenaline and dopamine kind of causes a high tide of sorts that hides those rocks, or kind of pushes to the background that trauma response in a way that, once the relationship kind of stabilizes, and that is not driven by adrenaline and dopamine anymore, it's more in this oxytocin kind of space, that those effects of the trauma that was a part of her life kind of come out in a way that's maybe even surprising to her.
Absolutely. So confusing, right? And a lot of times, um, the husband might even hear, like, I feel like sex is violating. Like it, like sometimes it's not only is it, um, like just like kind of unwanted, or there's not a lot of desire, but there can actually be strong negative feelings and even negative body reactions to sexuality that the husband,
Yeah.
it's so confusing for both of
So
them.
confusing and crushing, right? For a husband that's, loves his wife and enjoys connecting with her and has had these really fun, connective and passionate experiences together. And now when he kind of like reaches towards his wife, there's a cringe or a pullback and kind of a visceral kind of response from her. And it's like, what is happening here? Like, why are you doing that to me? Like, why are you responding like that and kind of treating me like I've hurt you in some way, or been ugly towards you? Like, I don't understand. Why does there a look in your eyes that kind of is like I'm the bad guy, or a bad guy in some way? I don't understand what's happening here. Can you maybe help that guy that's in that position, just bewildered about what's going on here, kind of understand what maybe is happening there?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times wives don't really know what's going on with themselves unless they've done some therapy and some work. And so they're not really able to give an explanation as to what's happening. And so it just feels doubly confusing.
Yes, exactly. I mean, what is happening is literally the body is remembering what it was like in the moments where the abuse, or where the unsafe sexual experience, how it felt in the body, is being literally re-experienced in the moment, and that
Mm.
sexuality becomes a trigger that pulls that body memory up, where that is what the body is experiencing, even when the wife knows, I love this person, I am safe right now, i I know that that is not his intention. And so it's like, how in the world could my body be feeling this way? And in that moment, what has happened is, it is a lot like literally a dragon has come into the room, and that is no longer, nobody is creating that but the trauma. The wife isn't choosing it, and the wife doesn't have the power to just quit it, right? And the husband is not causing it by how he's approaching sexuality.
Which means that the husband can't like just fix it either, right?
Neither can.
Such a powerless place,
Oh,
as a
yes.
man, I want to be able to fix it. I want to be able to make it better. That I want to know, what am I doing wrong? If I know what I'm doing wrong, maybe I can change that and not do it, and it'll fix it. I think it'll
Right.
be better.
Yeah.
But I think maybe one of the hardest parts of what it is you're saying on this experience is that there's not just something that I can do to fix it.
Mhm. Right. The dragon is slayable. It is slayable, but there isn't anything that can be done in the sense of, if I just approached it this way, or if I just said this thing, then that is going to help her remember that I'm safe and that I love her, and that I would never hurt her, and I would hurt anyone who hurt her. I feel protective of her. She's my treasure. I cherish her. And there's nothing that the wife can do in that moment to just say, body, stop re-experiencing your trauma.
Yeah, maybe we can spend just another minute there, kind of making sense of this thing that happens sometimes, where it seems inconsistent, right? Like maybe we can be engaging and have an experience and it's fine and it's good, and then maybe we have another experience together and like out of the blue it seems, that the everything changes. Like in a moment, like something is said or something happens, or I touch my wife in a given way, and it just like the whole atmosphere changes and it's like I'm with a different person suddenly. And can you maybe help make sense of that for the husband that's been in that situation, or the wife that's kind of experiencing that and doesn't know how to make sense of it?
Yeah. Anytime that we, so the wife experienced an unsafe sexual experience or an unsafe physical experience, that her brain learned we can never let that happen again. And the brain automatically collects details from that moment and stores them in the body, and then becomes hyper vigilant of wanting to alert the person if that is going to be coming. It's a little bit like a warning system, right? If you're going to go around the corner and get punched in the face, your body's like, oh, we know that this type of corner, there's always a punch around. When we walk around, there's going to be pain there. There's going to be something dangerous there. And so the body has been wired by God to create warning systems so that we can survive. And when it can be something chronic and smaller, but when there is something that one single time there was a feeling of not being safe physically and sexually, that is enough to wire into the brain to be hyper vigilant, looking for any indication that that could be happening again. And so it could be a tone of voice that the husband uses. It could be a certain position. It could be a certain touch. It could be, it can literally be that sometimes one thing can trigger trauma and another time that same thing may not trigger trauma. That those for at certain times the brain kind of goes to the place of like, oh, that's an indication that the bad thing is happening, and
You would
that,
call that a trigger.
yeah.
Right? I mean, it can be a smell, it can be a taste, it can be a sound, it can be a body sensation, it could be any piece of data that the brain has kind of collected at the time of that traumatic experience and associated with that traumatic experience, that then becomes a signal to the brain, a warning signal to the brain about potential danger happening, right? And so
Yeah.
you might even not be consciously aware of it and focus on it, because the brain is taking in all sorts of data all the time, right?
Mhm.
That we're not consciously aware of.
Mhm.
All of our skin, every minute of every day is taking in pressure and sensation and temperature.
Mhm.
Our ears picking up all sorts of noise, our nose and mouth are kind of taking in data, and the brain has a filtering process, right, that it uses to kind of filter out everything that we're not focused on,
Mhm.
so that we can focus. Because if we were noticing all of those data points at every moment of every day, we'd just completely be overwhelmed. Right?
Mhm.
So the brain filters out into whatever we're focused on at that moment. And while it's still taking in that other data, it's not putting it in front of us. It's kind of running in the background. And so sometimes the thing that's triggering is something that the brain picked up in the background, and you're not even aware of what it is because that's not what you were focused on, but the brain noticed it and kind of triggered that safety system, right?
Yes,
Which can
exactly.
be really confusing because you're like, what happened?
Nothing happened, right? It can
Nothing happened.
feel like, but nothing happened. And the one who's experiencing the trigger might not actually even be able to identify what the trigger was. They may not even be able
They
to know.
feel and hear the alarm in their body, but
Mhm.
can't figure out and what triggered the alarm.
Yes, what started it. And, this type of trauma is especially insidious in the way that couples get married and the spouse who's been sexually traumatized, physically traumatized isn't aware of that. And so there can be this dynamic of feeling like, but I have to have sex with my spouse,
Mhm.
right? For me not to, or that
They're
I'm
going
not.
to leave me. They're going to feel like I bait and switch them. They're going to feel unloved. And so I've got to just grit my teeth and do it anyways.
Right, which then creates reinforcement to the negative emotional pairing with sexuality.
Yeah. And can cause that to get paired with the spouse to where it didn't start out having anything to do with the spouse at all.
Yes.
That now those repeated experiences with the spouse have tangled up that traumatic experience now with the spouse, which is totally unfair and part of the just the like you said the insidiousness of how the enemy kind of attacks a couple and an individual in a really vicious kind of way.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think for the couple to be able to understand why the body is having this response can create a lot of relief, right? That there's the pain of the feeling of helplessness, right? But then there's also a lot of empowerment that can come from understanding, because if we understand, then we can kind of lock arms and we can work together at slaying the dragon, of being aware when the dragon is in the room. And the husband has the remedy, right? In the sense of his how his love for her and the tenderness he feels that she was hurt, the protection that he feels for her, the empathy he feels for her. It's so powerful in that moment, such powerful medicine to the trauma, that of being able to notice that when the trauma is present in the room, then that's actually the opportunity for healing and to be able to take blows at, to go with our analogy, at the dragon. It just looks different, right? We shift our focus and no longer it's like, okay, sexuality, that's, let's put it to the side for a minute and let's lock arms against the dragon in the room. And the way, like the husband's, swords are empathy, right? Of protecting her, of like, oh, let's stop. Let me sit with you. Let me hold you. Right. And the body, literally, she's healed. There's a healing experience. Her body is experiencing, oh, when I'm scared, my spouse protects me, and she feels safe.
Yes.
She feels safe and she feels seen. And then her body calms down and actually experiences safety. Right. And so the importance of awareness and of making the implicit explicit, right, of for the couple to be able, for the husband to say, okay, where did you go? I notice your eyes look distant, look far away, or you notice your wife kind of stops responding, right? And so right away it's like, are you okay? Or where are you? Or let's slow things down. Or for the wife to say, I don't know, but I'm having anxiety. My chest feels tight, right? And so we're noticing when the dragon is in the room much sooner. And so we're not getting ambushed.
Right. Gosh, it's so good, Tish. I really appreciate just being able to kind of practically help kind of the couple, the husband, who's asking this question and going, how do I understand what's going on here? What do I do here? And it's so helpful not only to understand what's taking place, but also to begin having some practical direction on what do I do? How do I help in the situation? How do I navigate it? And how do I not make things worse in this? I'm wondering if we can maybe take a moment and as the husband who's asking this question is going, how do I have this conversation with my wife? Like, how do I engage this a little bit? There's all of these things that are going on. I miss that connection with my wife. I don't want to go the rest of our married life together, not having that connection as a part of our relationship. And I'm trying the best I know how to figure out how to navigate this with her. And if we were going to make a resource here, if we were going to be able to say, if you're in that boat, if that's you in your situation, then maybe you guys can watch this clip together. Maybe we can take this in a video clip and watch it together, and it be a starting place for a conversation about where to go from here and how to navigate it. If you were going to have a little chat for a moment with this guy's wife, and we kind of pull up, and you're talking through the screen, and she's sitting on the other side, and they've got this point of pain and tension and confusion and not know what's going on and not knowing where to begin and where to go, or can it be different? In is it even worth the effort to lean into that? Why would I want to go down that road? What might you say to her, Tish?
I think I would tell her first that your body can be trusted. And so if your body is having this response of aversion, fear, disgust, then that's for a reason. And that for it's very important that we listen to the story that it's telling. And it's valid, it's important, and you may not understand it, and as an aside, I think a lot of times couples come in and there isn't the connection. There's a feeling of, well, I wasn't sexually assaulted, but I had this aversion to sex. And it's a little bit more complex of how the sexuality and the physicality was impacted by life's experiences. So I think I would just start with, your body is telling an important and true story. And to be able to listen to it is the very most important place to start. And then I think I would just want to normalize, right, what she's experiencing, because there's such this feeling of, I'm a freak of nature. My body is broken. There is something horribly wrong with me, right? I love my husband and I hate sex. And I didn't used to. What in the world is wrong with me? And so then I think I would just want to hear, kind of the feelings that she's feeling. Really common feelings are shame and guilt, having feeling like sex is gross or disgusting, having a visceral aversion to even the thought of sex. And then I would just say that that is telling the story that something has happened that has created that response in your body. And so I think I would really want to instill hope that God created our bodies to heal, and whatever has been wired can be rewired. And we just need to, you need a guide. I would say that couples who are experiencing this type of situation, I would recommend therapy. I would recommend a counselor who has experience in this, right? Because there is a path to healing. And so to have someone that can come alongside you guys and help you with that. But I think I would want to instill hope that this is not a life sentence. And then I think I would want to really empathize with the grief, right? It's like, it sucks that this happened, right? And that now it's still impacting your life. And I think of being able to sit with the injustice of that the pain that it's causing her, the pain that it's causing the spouse, right? And there's this sense of this feeling of, I just don't want it to, if it, especially if it's very clear of what the experience was that has created the aversion, there can be such a sense of, I'm not going to let it impact my relationship. I just want the past to be in the past. And I would really want to empathize with them and let them know that a part of the process of healing is grieving together and being able to lock arms in that grief and experience the comfort of being together in their pain. And so I think that would be what I would start with.
You mentioned, Tish, that it's not a life sentence, that, that which is kind of hinting at what we know to be true in the work that we do with couples, and that healing is possible, and that God wants to bring about restoration and redemption of these parts of our life that have been wounded and broken and impacted by the enemy, and bring wholeness and fullness of life into these things. And I wonder if you couldn't maybe speak to that for a moment, and just about one, maybe casting a vision a little bit of where you see couples get to, and what can, in situations, if there's a couple that's on the very front end of this journey, and they're going, where can this path even go? Can you paint a picture a little bit, cast a vision for where that journey can go? And then maybe we'll take a couple of minutes and just kind of sketch out the map a little bit of what they can expect along in that journey. But where can that path go if they have the courage to walk it out?
Yeah, I think that experiencing the couple being able to neutralize shame together, that shame is one of the biggest obstacles, and that is very isolating to, what we'll say in this case, the wife. And being able to have those conversations and be able to be together, and know, for the husband to know how to talk with his wife when she's experiencing shame, right? When she's like, I'm just a failure, right? I'm too much, I'm a burden. And being able to give the couple really practical tools of how to begin experiencing healing in the shame, that the shame is literally was inflicted by the abuse or the violation that has happened. And then being able to have the tools to, in the moment that trauma is present, to be able to be in that moment together, notice the triggers and be aware of those triggers together, being able to navigate and communicate what safety feels like sexually, and not be pushing through negative sexual experiences, being able to really empower the husband so that he can be educated about, what does trauma look like when it's triggered? What am I looking for? And being able to learn that in his spouse so that he notices, where did you go? What's going on? And then the couple knows, okay, when that happens, we stop, we turn to each other, instead of the spouse running to the bathroom and closing the door and crying, right? They're staying together and they're fighting the dragon together. And the husband, because he understands, is able to give acceptance, is able to give empathy, is able to give compassion and protection. And then I think of, I don't know how practical you want me to get, but there's some very specific, of kind of being able to deconstruct sexuality in the relationship, and then be able to reconstruct kind of healthy, healed sexuality. And that happens both emotionally, physically, and relationally. And that would be kind of the sexual retraining process.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. So appreciate you kind of sketching that out. Because if we're on the front end of this and we're looking at it and going, goodness, what does that journey look like? What does it entail? Like, I don't, it's so murky, it's so gray, kind of out there. When folks have walked all the way through that, when you have a couple that comes in and they have walked all the way through that journey with you, right? What is it like for them on the other side of that? What can they expect to experience
Mhm.
in the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it brings a smile to my face because I'm thinking of my clients of and them getting to experience healing. And it literally, I delight when I see their faces and think about these precious couples. The wife gets to experience sexuality as safe and connect.
Mm,
What once was terrifying or what felt violating, now all of a sudden there's freedom, freedom to be present, freedom, freedom to be able to connect, not feeling the dread, not feeling the aversion, not having the um, body reactions of trauma, but actually a sense of being able to have a thriving, connecting, sexual relationship with their spouse that's not hindered by um, trauma. Mm-hmm.
awesome. Yeah. I have that same sense that as we're kind of talking about that, I have the faces of couples in my head that I've walked through that journey with, and just the, you know, it's a common thing for us to talk about towards the end of our work about how I wish I could take a clip from our session and jump in a time machine and kind of rewind back to the beginning of our work and kind of show them where they're going to be at the end of this journey and
Mm-hmm.
how it's going to be different. And that one of the advantages that you and I have, is having walked this journey with lots of different couples, we can see that end from the beginning.
Yes.
That it feels very dark and very hopeless and discouraging when you're coming into this, but we as the therapists are able to have hope for ourselves and for the couple, right? Because we've seen the journey and we know how to get there, and we know the beautiful place that it lands on the other side, and and can hold that vision in our heart with the couple as we're going through the hard parts of that journey together, and really being able to see folks through to the end of it. That's one of the for me, one of the most precious things that I get to do with folks, that the King has kind of privileged me to travel through those really hard places, and see him redeem them, see him work miracles in those situations, and bring back to life things that are completely dead, that in a way that only he can. And
Yes.
it's amazing. It's so fun to get to be a part of, and to get to be part of people's story in that way.
Such a privilege. I'm choked up when I think about the privilege that it is, when I think about the courage of the individuals that do this kind of work and that fight so hard together with Christ for healing. And then I feel the absolute honor it is to be an eyewitness, to get to witness literally darkness being vanquished and what was dead resurrected. I mean, that's the power. That is the power of our King. That um, as far as the curse is found, his power is enough.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, and amen. Man, Tish, I just so appreciate you being with me today, and for us to be able to take on some of these really common, really challenging questions, right? That, the ones that affect everybody, whether it be the desire differences and kind of navigating that and trying to understand the common disconnect that couples often feel. That's, pretty much universal. You
Yep.
know, like one in one couple are going to have to navigate through those tensions. The details may be different, who's experiencing what and where the pain and conflict is precisely, varies couple to couple. But that kind of conflict and the difficulties that it comes, universal.
It
Like
is.
everybody experiences that to one degree or another, right? So to
Yeah.
be able to spend some time just kind of talking about that in a way that really hopefully helps normalize that for you if you're out there and you're experiencing that. Hopefully there's a sense of, oh, well, we're not alone in that. And oh, this is really normal. And oh, we can learn how to navigate this in a way that can feel good to us and be complementary for both of us and really empowering to our relationship and our sex life, and help it spiral upwardly into something that's passionate and vibrant and full of life and brings connection and pleasure and enjoyment and excitement, and that we can look forward to getting sweeter and sweeter and better year after year in our marriage together.
Yes.
And for the couple that's just in, the valley of dry bones, and where it just feels dead, and it feels like there's the fire breathing dragon, that's kind of scorched earth in their sex life, and it feels bleak and it feels hopeless and it feels like there's no life here. Nothing can live here. Nothing can grow here. To be able to paint a picture of what it can be, and to help there be understanding about what's happening there, and shine a light on the dragon so that we can see it a little more clearly and what's happening here, and have a bit of a game plan and pathway towards what it looks like to navigate through that.